Hey, my name is Ken, and I'm going to provide a little bit of instruction for anybody looking to make the big $5,000 to $15,000 investment in their home. Painting your house is a pretty big decision, and there's a lot of things that you need to take into consideration before you do so. So I got a couple slides provided that pretty much are 5 years of my knowledge working as a painter, and hopefully it helps you make a right decision when you select a painter or you decide to do the work yourself to take all these things into consideration. All right, so you want to paint your house. What you need to take into consideration is where your home is. And that's not just where it is in the United States. It has to do with if you're in a humid section of the country, are you exposed to a lot of rain, or is there salt water in the air? And these are all elements that are going to cause your paint to wear at a different rate. All right, so sun exposure is another big thing. If you're covered by a lot of trees, your home is going to be hit with sun on one side where the other portion of the home may not. And when you clear foliage and vegetation, what that's going to cause is the portions that are not covered by vegetation are going to be exposed to sun more and are going to be faded a little bit more. So once you remove moss and vines and any trees that are pressed up against the house, it's going to look odd, and that's going to be an opportunity for you to paint your house. Then dry rot, termite, critter damage, all the other normal things that come with home ownership are other reasons that you might need to be be painting your house. And that's mainly due to the fact that you're going to have to replace boards. There might be more significant damage done to your house, and basically you can't just paint one single portion of your home. It's good practice to just paint the whole entire house one color and keep it simple. And the best thing about it is once you look at all these factors, you may not have to paint your house at all. So you could save 5 to 15 grand just by dropping $200 to $400 on a contractor to come in and pressure wash your home. And what you'll find is using the mild soap that they use, it removes a lot of the dirt and the grime and everything else that builds up in your house, and it'll actually bring out the natural resilience in your first coat of paint. What you need to paint has a lot to do with the type of house you have. So with a fascia, window molding, and shutters, you may want to draw contrast based on how much you invested in the architecture of your home. The other big thing that you want to take into account is if you do not want attention drawn to it, and that's stuff like the attic ventilation or the basement or the crawl space vents. If you don't want attention drawn to those items, which they are more of the ugly items on your home, paint them the same color as your house. There's no reason to go ahead and draw attention to it. So one of the biggest things when you hire a contractor and you do the work yourself is prep work. And 70% of the work is making sure that the house is actually prepped for paint. So you want to clear all the vegetation like we were talking about before up and against your house and make sure that it stays that way for the duration of your home ownership. And you want to replace all the damaged boards. So anything that's affected by wood rot, termites, infestations, or even sometimes the wood actually gets so rotted and worn away that it just cracks. Anything in those cases, you want to go ahead and replace those. But the primary thing is you want to make sure it's primed. Even if you have to do two coats of primer, depending on the type of wood, cedar sometimes requires a good 2 coats. You want to make sure they're primed because you'll be replacing them soon if not. The other thing is have your home pressure washed. It might sound like you're saving 200, 400 bucks, but you're dropping anywhere from 5 to 15 grand. It's just not worth it. You need to have the surface of your home prepped so that the paint, basically, which is just a runny glue tinted to whatever color you want to make sure that it's able to adhere to the surface properly. If you don't do this, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Then for fixing dry rot, you want to make sure you're using the right materials. There's lots of products out there. Well, there's only a handful of them where you can find in a store. But I use Arbitron. There's a lot of the other ones out there, but make sure that these 2-part epoxies that you apply are done over a course of several days. Make sure that the moisture in the wood is not present, and make sure that anything loose is removed. You'll read the instructions, but a lot of times people look for shortcuts, and your responsibility as a homeowner is to ensure that the contractors that you select are doing the right work, because what's going to happen is no more than 2 to 3 months after this work is done, using, say, a dry rot chemical, a 2-part chemical, I swear to you, the epoxy that you place in there will just fall right out. It has nothing to grip onto. There was moisture present in the wood. These are all really important things to take into consideration. The other thing is you want to fill any holes or gaps within the boards, and it all depends on the type of home you have. But the number one thing that I always tell every one of our customers is to make sure that they use the right caulking. There's cheap stuff out there. You'll see the $1.50, $2 packs. I promise you, you have to spend $4 to $5 minimum on the caulking that you get. And what it has to do is two big things. It has to do with how well it adheres to your home, and also how much flexibility you have. Basically, over the course of a year, your home is going to be exposed to several different temperatures throughout the day. And as these boards contract and expand, what that's doing is putting a wear on the caulking. And once you paint this, it's going to seal it off from the elements. But there's also the potential that if you get a cheap caulk, it dries out. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to just peel off with 2 fingers caulking because the contractors or the painters that were there before just used trying to save 15, 20 bucks. And if you have to, just buy your own caulking. Say, hey, listen, I want to get this 12, 15-year caulking. And make sure that it's paintable. 90% of them are. And just provide it to them and say, I don't want anything else used on my house. And the other big thing is remove any loose nails or staples. There's always a potential for these items to rust. You'll paint your house. You'll get a rainfall after the pressure washing. And you'll have nothing but rust draining down the side of your house. And then the last thing, and a lot of these guys will say they're insured and whatnot, and it doesn't mean that they're all replaceable. So any valuables that you're concerned about them getting damaged, make sure you have them out of the way, because when they spray, there's always going to be a fine mist that's going to be falling down on your valuables, and I know you don't want a speckled mess on any of your lawn figurines. Painting, which is, believe it or not, one of the quickest parts of painting a home, is you want to make sure you buy the right paint. If you're spending anywhere from, say, 5 to 10 grand in labor, you do not want to go ahead and shortcut on what you're basically getting your house contracted for. All right? So I'm not going to tell you a brand. Sherwin-Williams, Valspar, they're all good. Just don't get that cheap stuff. All right? It's good for maybe painting your garage. All right? If you're doing a big change in color and a drastic change, if you're going lighter and you already had a darker color before, you have to put 2 coats. You don't have to prime, but just make sure that you have 2 coats. I'm telling you, you're not going to be very happy with, you see all the colors bleed through. And then when spraying, these guys get up on the ladders and they're spraying, make sure that they're moving the tarps. Constantly you'll see if they leave a tarp on there, there'll be a mini greenhouse effect and it'll kill all the bushes. I've killed enough of them to learn my lesson, but just make sure that these guys are basically bringing the tarps along as they move along the project, and they're not leaving them on there for more than a half hour. And on a sunny day, it only takes 10, 15 minutes. Move the vehicles away from the house for the same exact reason as I said before. The paint's going to be speckled everywhere when these guys are spraying. And then check to make sure that when they're covering these windows, I have a picture on the page right here, but when they're covering the windows, make sure they're all the way to the edge. You always want a fine line. That's what you're paying for. And you don't want any crummy craftsman work. Or basically, if they don't tape these things correctly, you're going to have specks of paint all over your windows. And it's a pain to get off. I know they can go ahead and come across with a razor blade or some turpentine, but trust me, it doesn't come off as good as just doing the right prep work. All right, and that's all I have for you. If you have any suggestions or any questions, please post them below. I'll promise to get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for your time.